Today we're going to welcome Nikki Wagner and David Wilder from Chinook Enterprises. Nikki has come to Chinook, having served most recently as the Associate Director at Trillium Employment Services, based in Tacoma, and Board Chair of Community Employment Alliance, a statewide consortium that advocates for employment opportunities on behalf of people with disabilities. She's worked in the disability employment field for 2004. David Wilder has worked at Chinook Enterprises for 22 years, and he's been a human rights advocate for 35. And I know from personal experience that he's going to put on an excellent show today because he's a very fine performer at presenting. So we'll send it over to them, and thank you very much, both of you. And thanks everybody for coming.
Well, thanks for having us today. I'm pleased that we're both vaccinated and have our masks off so you can actually hear us speak. I'm Nikki Wagner. I work at Chinook Enterprises. And I think Katrina needs to be maybe put on mute for just a moment. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I use she, her pronouns. And for those who are visually impaired, I'm a Caucasian female with brown hair, wearing an orange dress with glasses. First, I'll introduce myself, and then we'll do a land acknowledgement. And go ahead, David, introduce yourself.
My name is David Wilder. I am wheelchair bound, white, Caucasian, dressed white hat with white pants and white suit coat today. I look forward to the presentation.
So we first want to acknowledge that our business occupies the ancestral lands of the coastal Samish people, in particular the Clallam, Lumi, Samish, Semiahmoo, Skagit, Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Swinomish, and Upper Skagit tribes. We see you, we respect your right to sovereignty and self-determination, and we are committed to being better listeners, learners, and lifting Indigenous voices. So this is our agenda, what we're going to go over with you today. This is our first time presenting together, so thanks for being patient with us, and please feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat, and we'd be happy to follow up with you and get a transcript if you want to put your information in the chat. If you'd like a special one-on-one session with me and David, we'd be happy to chat with you. So we're going to go over a real quick brief history of Chinook Enterprises. Certainly it's a new business to me, and so some of you might not be familiar with what Chinook does. Then we're going to talk a little bit about diverse hiring, why we would do it, some success stories, and how it works. David's going to share his own story with you about his career path and his journey to employment and what he does now. And then we'll end with a call to action and some time for questions. So I'll just go through this as briefly as possible. Chinook was founded over 40 years ago. And what I did was I put up a picture of both Chinook's timeline and a disability rights timeline. So you can really see the journey that was started by Rob Martin was a result of a Skagit County grant, and another program had closed. And so in 1980, the initial component was only placing people in competitive employment, which was something that didn't exist in Skagit County. And amazingly enough, actually, Washington is a leader in the nation for placing people with disabilities. So out of all of the states, this program was started many places in Washington 40 years ago, and Chinook started in Skagit County. So the program started at a 12 by 14 office located on Burlington Boulevard, and about 6 weeks into the operation, a second person was hired. At that time, we started with a grounds maintenance crew, and 2 people had competitive community and placement jobs. And Rob shared to me how he would work on the grounds crew during the day with the guys, and then job coach in the evenings, and that his family would have dinner with him at the local employer where the person was placed. And so he kind of did double duty for a long time. Then the Skagit County Human Services Coordinator referred Chinook to a new office space in downtown, and it became quickly apparent that the house hadn't been working order in a long time, and Chinook moved in, warts and all. And then later we moved to the college building where we are now. In '87, we started with the Boeing offload program. And so there's really three legs of the stool that make up a social enterprise model at Chinook. So both our production, where David works, and our grounds crew, the revenue from those programs pay into our community employment program and allows us to serve people who don't have funding or to serve lots of people with very limited funds. In 2010, we became very lean. I think many of us businesses did. There were a lot of challenges, and we started receiving many services unfunded. So we were providing services to customers more than ever without any reimbursement, but luckily Boeing and grounds were doing really well at that time. We would say that over the past few years, things have been in flux here at Chinook, but referrals remain consistent. And certainly the model has changed from hiring people to work here to hiring people to work out in our community and working more and more with business partners. As diversity becomes a buzzword, and there are J.E.D.I series going on all over our nation, and people with disabilities are seen now as more skilled and competent than ever. And our state phases out of institutional-based settings to more community-based settings. We see that we're just in the middle of Chinook's story. Every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we're just right in the middle of this social justice movement. I would say that we remain poised for a big win, and we can talk more about that in the next slide. So there's lots of reasons why you might diversify your workforce. I think we know that it makes business sense. It improves the bottom line. That studies show, and David and I can send those studies to you, that customers are more likely to purchase goods and services from employers who embrace all kinds of diversity, and that it maximizes their customer base to hire someone with a disability, because individuals with disabilities make up 26% of Americans, 13% of Washingtonians, which is 1 out of every 8 individuals. And at Chinook, our clients typically stay with an employer for 6 to 7 years. It's a lot harder to get a job if you're someone with a disability, and you might not hop around as much as someone without one. And similar to curb cuts, we do assessments to evaluate accessibility and the safety of your workplace. And so we find in some studies that actually there are 34% fewer safety incidents for folks who are hired through supported employment programs. And the definition of supported employment, which you may have heard already, is that it's a legal term for an accommodation made to someone who has a disability that needs a job coach. And that job coach can help them find a job, learn how to do a job, and then also to keep their job. So that's a legal definition, supported employment, and it's something that, again, Washington is a leader for. Other businesses that have taken on hiring initiatives and challenge other employers to do the same, Walgreens, Amazon, and Microsoft all have disability hiring initiatives. And some of the data that's come out of that is that, absenteeism is 40% less, and that people with disabilities perform just as well or better than the counterparts without disabilities. So it really makes good business sense. And I'm just going to show you 2 real brief success stories, because we all need something to feel good about to get through our day. And the first story is Zach. So I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to pull up Zach's video really quick.
Okay, take 5. Let's roll it.
I do the mail. One second. So
By names it and put them in the cubbies and those blue tubs.
I just want to pause. Can everyone hear Zach? Thumbs up if you can hear Zach. Thumbs up. Okay, thank you.
My favorite thing is like keep Britain tidy. What's it? And getting spotless. Let's see. As the LBs, I like busings and the changes of solutions, doing the hosting, a little serving, and a little bit of help from my friends. I got the Employee of the Month award, Big Glass Apple. I feel like flabbergasted. Like I'm so impressed. Also, I volunteer at the library. I get to clean the bookshelves, spray on the display cases. When it get dusty, yeah. Okay, my favorite thing, like as a YMCA, they have a trans area called the Kids Corner. I get to play ukulele, and I get to play music, read stories. I do poetry. I do art and voice impressions.
So shout out to Rebecca at Gadget Media Marketing who created Zach's video. We have one more video to share with you just because, again, who doesn't love to feel good and watch these beautiful success stories? And that video is Nathan. Nathan has been at his job 21 years almost. So let's see what Nathan does. Thumbs up if you can hear Nathan.
Nathan came to us in April of 2001. He is one of the longest standing employees here. He comes in with a smile on his face, anxious to do his job. He will put away the dry and clean dishes, utensils, and he will also break down the boxes. He works hard. He is proud of what he does for us. Every day he comes, he teaches us what it means to be valued. A lot of what we see in Nathan has come through his parents, that they have never told him he couldn't do something or couldn't be somebody. Finding that right fit, where opportunity opens its door to you and where you become committed to a community and a community becomes committed to you, that is ideal.
Bear with me just one more minute. Okay, so I'm almost done talking. I'm gonna hand it over to David. I will say that the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is twice what it is for people without disabilities, which is shocking when you see videos of really competent folks like we saw with Nathan and with Zach. Zach holds more jobs than I've had at any one time and has gone back to work at every single employer. And so we know that during times like now where you cannot find good help, it really makes sense to think outside the box about your recruitment strategies and how your job descriptions are written in a way that may be screening people out versus screening people in through your hiring process. And really, COVID taught us to assess everything, right? To throw it all out and start fresh. So how do you do supported employment, whether it's with Chinook or with Sherwood or with a different agency? We're all sister agencies. We all want the same thing. The first step is usually you have a meeting with an employment specialist. They go over some tasks with you. I had this meeting with Lynette Brower last week. We went out in Anacortes and looked at some custodial needs. I made a list of all the things that she said she wanted. I brought that back and created, went to our applicant pool. So at any one time, we have 30 to 50 individuals looking for competitive employment and gainful employment at Chinook. We serve about 200 customers currently in Skagit County. And so we go back and we look at who are our applicants, and then we bring those applicants to the employer and say, hey, I think this person might be the right fit for you. Also, remember that your traditional interview setting, that's just a verbal interview where you're handing somebody a list of questions to read and respond to, might not be the best fit. So you'll want to work with an agency about how do you diversify the interview process, and maybe try a working interview where that person can show you their skills versus have to tell you about themselves. Then it's hire your employee, but typically then you're not done. Usually you're connected to the agency that you choose to hire through. So at Chinook, our employment specialist would be on site with the person, learning the job alongside them to make sure that they could provide any additional supports, and that's at no cost to the employer. The state subsidizes some of that work, as well as some of our other entities. We use the revenue to pay for that. And then periodically we come in and help with check-in. So we fade back so that the person's independent on their job. They don't need somebody with them at all times. Typically, people just need a little extra help to get started. And we come in once a month, once a week, whatever the cadence is that the business desires is how often you should see your job coach or employment specialist. That way, if there's a new manager and they don't get it, we can come in and help them learn more about the best way to work with their employee. And we place people, who go all the way from real significant impairment, that maybe they are hearing impaired and visually impaired and have a physical disability, all the way to somebody who doesn't have a visual disability. It might be a hidden disability like post-traumatic stress or a mental illness. So we really run the gamut, and I'm going to turn it over now for some more beautiful stories, and we'll go with David's story and he can share his journey with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm 52 years old, so I started out in the 70s and 80s. It was a very different, in some ways, it was a very different time than it is now. I went to grade school, got through it, got through high school. It was all very difficult because I didn't know what I would do after that. When I graduated from high school in 1987, I did move to Seattle and King County for a while, because we were told that Mount Vernon and Skagit County couldn't provide services as far as job or anything like that for me, and transportation was an issue. And we thought Seattle and King County would be the best bet, which in financial terms is probably true because they're the largest county and the largest city in the state. So theoretically that is true, but it doesn't always work out in individual circumstances. So I came back to Skagit County in the summer of '88. Like some of you, I needed financial aid to go to college. I was 19 years old. I went to a service agency that worked with people with disabilities to get jobs and other types of funding. The first case worker that I met with, after name and address and things like that, her first question was, David, even if you got a college degree, what would you do with it? Being a smart alecky 19-year-old at the time, I said, I hope to get a better job than you've got, and spun around and went out the door. A couple of days later, I went back to the same agency, met with a different caseworker. We got along, so he helped me get financial aid for college. went up to Skagit Valley College, started in computer systems. Skagit Valley College in 1988 was very different than it is now. In 1988, it had one makeshift ramp to the main building. That was rather interesting, but I made it through that. Then made it through the first part of my first day, but then had to use the restroom. Got in all right because I could use my wheelchair to push the door open. But one major problem when I was finished, in 1988, no sliding doors, no push buttons yet. So I couldn't get out of the restroom myself. So I spent the afternoon about 4 hours in there because I couldn't get one person to take 30 to 60 seconds of their lives at that time to open the door for me. But after I got out, I went to instructors and college officials because even at 19, I realized if I was going to go on and go to college, that couldn't stay that way when I needed to use a restroom or any other facility on the campus. So we worked out some things then. My first year didn't go very well. I figured out right quick that computer information systems wasn't the right thing for me. But then the summer between my first and second year, I met a man, SBC President Dr. James M. Ford, who told me that you could switch your major. And I did, and I switched it to human services. And I have had no regrets since, as I found out later after his passing, from the time that he met me and told me that I could switch my major. It turns out that not only did he participate in many presentations that I did for SBC, as like videotaping accessible facilities, helping get automatic door openers, sliding doors, when we would do renovations of current buildings or build new buildings, he'd have me work with the architects as well as many others on making them accessible ahead of time so that we wouldn't have to make so many changes after the building was built, because that's cost-wise, that is very difficult, and just space-wise, it is very difficult. So it all worked out in that sense. I graduated with an associate in technical arts degree in human services in June of 1994. The letters on the degree have changed over the years, but I beat the odds. As part of that, I began my public speaking journey. Dr. Ford was going to have me speak to one class about the human services, one grade school class about the human services program as a vocation, as well as an education opportunity. But he was so impressed with the presentation that he asked me to speak to all 8 classes that came that particular day. So in a sense, I haven't shut up since, but that's all for the better, as it turns out. Then after I graduated in 1994, I worked for the college for 3 years through grants and volunteer positions in the Disabled Student Services Office, Career Services Office, and Human Services program, promoting the programs of the college and the events of the college for people with disabilities. But as we all know, grants run out for many different reasons, because government funding changes every year. The legislature meets. So after those grants ran out, the issue became then what? Because even in 1990, when the grants ran out. The issue for me as far as getting employment in the community, I knew I was smart enough, had some computer skills, had some other skills, but where could I go? Transportation was an issue in 1998. In some ways, it's still an issue. Accessible buildings is always an issue. So one of the staff members came to Rob in the summer of 1998, one of the staff members then here at Chinook Enterprises, and said, can we, the term was back then, carve out a job for him working in our Chinook's production division. If we teach him our computer programs and our programs that we need. So I do as much of the Boeing paperwork as is needed for the personnel in our production division. I've been doing it for 22 years, as well as advocating for people with disabilities for better opportunities for them to get jobs, but also to get housing, as well as many other opportunities. And so as I close, I have one question for you, and you can put that in the comments or questions in the chat. What next steps as employers or community members can you take as business to diversify in our community? Thank you.
So really, David kind of shared his story with you about some of the challenges he had to go through. I didn't have to spend my first day at college in the bathroom, and nobody ever told me that what would I need a degree for. So I think, you know, recognizing our own privilege and using that to empower people who have had their power taken away from them is a social justice movement. And part of why all of you are attending this series is because you're interested in learning more about what you can do. And so this is our call to action to you. Put in the chat one step you can take to help your business or community be more diverse. It doesn't have to be anything big, but I'm gonna read these out because I think, David, you'll enjoy this as well as I will. Monique says, oh no. And Angie says, thanks for sharing your story, David.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I know one of the things at Chinook that we have to do is we need to be putting in some door switches, because we've found that some of our doors are just too heavy. David has to kind of knock with his foot to get in mine. And so we're gonna use some grant funding to put in some accessible door switches. So again, it doesn't have to be anything too big or too small. I think every step, including inviting a person with a disability on an advisory committee, or going to a middle school or high school transition program to talk to people who might have disabilities about what your business does. These are not huge tasks for businesses to do, and yet they make a big difference. Angie says we're working on recruiting a board member with a disability to serve on our board. Well done, Angie. Thank you, David, for being an advocate to all individuals who have a disability and making us better and aware. I think helping people be empowered, right, so that their voice can be heard. And so there are lots of ways to help your current staff members who might have a disability feel comfortable sharing with you what kind of accommodation they might need. David, are you interested in sharing some of the accommodations that you use at your workstation?
In my case, it's an enlarged keyboard, which basically in my case means the keys are a little bigger. so that since I have to type basically with the right hand, it just allows me to type better, less errors, hopefully. And it also, the table's a little bit raised for my chair, so I can slide under the table a little better. And then there's been other ones over the years, but a lot of that also happens when my space gets moved every so often, because we're always changing the production area around over the years that I've been here. So
Thank you.
yeah,
I think, mostly, if you know that most accommodations are low cost to no cost. So it's a scary word for employers, but really in reality, it's usually not super expensive for the business. So I have to buy new tables anyway. Why don't I just buy the kind that can go up and down to accommodate a wheelchair? So, I'm going to read some more comments. So Annette says, being open-minded to not just accepting the status quo, but thinking outside the box when it comes to inclusion. And Emma said, more wheelchair accessible entrances. We only have one and lots of tricky doors to open that could get fixed. And there are grants to make those things more accessible. Sylvia says, listening from community members who face these challenges is key in our learning process. So true. Linda says, reach out and connect with organizations like Chinook or other groups that represent diverse people in our community, develop relationships for recruiting. Yes, please. We also need to be aware of the disabilities that we cannot see. Great point. And I think, the disclosure process is really intimidating and scary. Most of the people that I work with don't want to click a box that says they have a disability and call themselves out. And so then it becomes really hard to say, hey, I need an accommodation, or I need to go through this process, or I need to bring my dog with me when we do an active shooter drill because I'm just anxious and I have this thing going on. We all have our own things. And so a lot of us, want to keep those hidden, but really it behooves us to have a process where people can request what they need to come to work and be healthy and safe at work. So thank you, David, for sharing your story. My younger brother also shares similar circumstances. He's maintained work for 3 years straight with the help of similar services. Great work, Chinook. I think that the best part about COVID, which was terrible for all of us, and took its toll on many people, both medically and otherwise, is the stories of people getting to go back to work. I think that has been really a silver lining, is how many people have gotten called back to work, not laid off. And that really is a testament to how valuable our employees are. Linda works with community services. Sherwood works, yes, Angie works for Sherwood, and the Rising Tide lifts all boats, and there's Angie's info there. And as you all know, the next several weeks at the chamber, you're going to be hearing from all our organization about this movement. And so I welcome you to contact any of us with questions you might have, or if you want to learn more about how to make your workplace more accessible, or you want a diversity training, whatever it is, don't hesitate to call on any one of us. We all partner together. So I think that's it. Do you have anything else you want to say?
I think that's, we've made the main pitch for today. But if Nikki and everybody here has all the specific information that you need to work with Chinook as well as the other agencies, but if I can help in any way, bug Nikki or get a hold of me somehow, and I'd be happy to work with you if I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, David. Really great stuff there. I've heard your story, David, before, and I knew that you'd be very good at expressing these points to our audience. So I was really excited when Nikki said that she was going to bring you in. One thing I did want to do is recognize our sponsors. They're Camp Corey, the City of Sedro-Woolley, HKP Architects, CPI Plumbing and Heating, and Mount Vernon School District. We really appreciate your support in this program, and it's a value to be able to have you assist us putting it on. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you at the next J.E.D.I event, or actually sooner. Oh, really quick, we're going to do our first in-person event this Thursday, 4 to 6 at Tulip Valley Winery. Everybody come on out. We're going to have some appetizers and some wine and cider. All right, we'll